and welcome back to my channel. In this week's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a rosary. Specifically the rosary I have right here. So if you guys have been wondering how to make a rosary, then just keep on watching. So here's what you'll need. You'll need 59 beads. These are 6mm glass beads. You'll need a crucifix. My crucifix is about 1.5 inches long. You'll need a rosary center. You'll need 59 eye pins. I'm showing more than 59 here, but you get the point. I need 4 jump rings. This is more than 4, obviously. You'll need chain. I like to do this like chain link chain that looks like that. You'll need needle nose pliers, flat nose pliers. You'll need wire cutters. And here's me just showing them again. And sometimes your flat nose pliers will have wire cutters already on them, so check to see if it has it already, so you don't have to go ahead and buy wire cutters if you don't have them already. So for the first step, you need your beads, you need your eye pins, you're going to need your wire cutters, and your needle nose pliers. So for step 1, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our eye pins, and we're going to take one of our beads, and we're going to thread the bead on the eye pin. Now once the bead is on the eye pin, we are going to bend the wire at a 90-degree angle above the bead, like so. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut the wire at 1/4 inch long with our wire cutters. After cutting the wire, you should be left with something that looks like this. Now with this little bead piece, we're going to take our round nose pliers, we're going to grab the end of the wire, and we are going to roll back to make a little loop like how the eye pin originally has on the other end. Sometimes you have to readjust your pliers to get it perfectly right, because it doesn't always happen the first time, and then you should be left with something like this. So to make you further understand, I decided to record it a second time, so I'm just threading the bead on the wire. I'm bending it at a 90-degree angle. Because my nails are strong and I'm wearing gel nail polish, I can usually do it with my own nails and not using pliers to bend it, but I suggest using pliers if you don't have long nails. Then I'm cutting the wire at 1/4 inch long, and then I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to grab the tip of the leftover wire and I'm going to roll it back to make a little loop like I showed you before. I'll link some videos down in this description bar where people give a further explanation, a more clear explanation of what's happening here, but you can kind of get what I'm doing by looking at it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this to the rest of the remaining beads. So here I have the 59 beads done, and I'm just showing them off here. And what we're going to do now is we're going to separate 9 beads from the 59 beads. So basically we're going to make 2 piles, one pile with 9 beads and one pile with 50 beads. So here's me counting out the 9 beads. Now once you have the 9 beads, set them aside. We're going to use them later on. Now we have 50 beads with these little wires on them, and they're going to be used in the next few steps. So to begin the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 of the 50 beads, and we're going to do this 5 times, and we're going to take our round nose pliers. So this is 10 of the 50 beads right here. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to, oh look, that bead is rolling away. We're going to open up the loop on one of the ends of the beads, like I'm showing here. We're going to take one of the 10 beads and we're going to loop it on like so and then close up the loop. And we're going to continue doing this with the rest of the 8 remaining beads we have off to the side. So here I am doing it again so you guys get the idea that I'm just making a chain of beads. These beads are different from the 9 beads we set aside. These are 10 of the 50 beads that we have. So here's a sped up version of me doing it so you can get a better understanding. And basically we're going to continue doing this with the remaining 40 beads. We're going to make 4 more 10 links as I'm showing here. So if you're familiar with the rosary, you would call this a decade. So we're going to make 4 more decades because we have 1 decade done. So that's basically what I'm explaining right here. I'm showing that we have 1 decade and we're going to do 4 more decades. So now that we have 5 decades, I'm showing you that we still have those 9 beads separated. And now we're going to move on to the next step. The next step is cutting the chain. So you can put the beads to the side right now, and we're going to be cutting the chain. So basically here I'm showing you my chain, and what you're going to want to do is cut the chain into 1/2 inch long pieces. So depending on your chain, you can kind of count out how many links there are to count out 1/2 inch. For me, there's 7 links in 1/2 inch, so I always cut on the 8th link. And you're going to be doing this 14 times, so you'll have 14 1/2 inch chain pieces. So here's a visual of me just cutting the chain link so you guys can get a better understanding. So like I said, you want these small chain pieces, and you're going to do this 13 more times. So you'll have a total of 14 chain pieces. Now we're going to bring back those 9 beads I told you to set aside in the beginning, and we are going to separate 3 beads from those 9. So we'll have 2 piles, we'll have a 3 bead pile, and we'll have a 6 bead pile. And we're going to set those 6 loose beads aside. Now we're going to take our round nose pliers, and we're basically going to make the decade piece but with 3 beads. So we're just going to combine these 3 beads together by opening up the loop and then putting the bead on and closing the loop, and then opening up the loop again, putting the bead on and closing the loop. So we have a little 3 bead section. And if you're familiar with the Rosary, these would be the 3 Hail Marys we say at the introduction of the Rosary. So now that we have that done, we are going to be working with the 6 loose beads we set aside a few seconds ago. So with these 6 loose beads, we are going to bring back in our 14 pieces of chain. And these 14 pieces of chain, basically what we're going to do is we're going to set 2 to the side. So we have 12 pieces of chain and 6 loose beads. Now we're going to take our round nose pliers. We're going to take 1 bead, we're going to undo the loop on one side of the bead, like I'm showing you here. Then we're going to take one of the 14 pieces, 12 pieces of chain here. We're going to loop it on to the bead, and then once we have it looped on, we're going to close it up so that the chain is connected to the bead, like I'm showing you here. Now we're going to repeat this on the other side of the bead. So now we're going to open up the loop, we're going to put the chain on the loop, and then we're basically now going to have a chain, bead, chain section. So I'm guessing you'll kind of figure what we're going to do from here on out. Basically what we're going to do with the other 5 loose beads, we're going to use the rest of the chain that we have right there, and we're going to make these chain, bead, chain sections. Here's a sped up version of me doing it for you guys. It's assembly time. So we have our 6 chain, bead, chain sections. We have 4 jump rings, 2 pieces of chain. We have our 3 string bead. We have 5 decades. We have our rosary center, and we have our crucifix. So to begin assembling the final rosary, what we're going to do is we're going to take 1 decade of the rosary. We're going to unloop one of the ends, like I'm showing you here. And we're going to take the piece of chain, one of the 2 leftover pieces of chain, and we're going to loop it on to the first decade, and then we're going to close the loop. So now we should be left with a chain decade piece. Now what we're going to do is on the side of the decade that doesn't have the chain, we're going to open up that loop and we're going to thread one of the chain bead chain sections on there. And if you're familiar with the rosary, this is an Our Father bead. So we're going to loop an Our Father bead section onto the chain. So now we're going to loop the chain on there, close up the loop, and after this we should be left with a chain, a decade, chain, bead, chain. So now the next step is to grab another decade, and we're going to hook that decade onto that chain, bead, chain section. So here I'm showing we have a chain, we have a decade, we have chain, bead, chain, we have a decade. So the next step is we're going to add a chain, bead, chain section. So now once that's done, we're going to have a chain, a decade, chain, bead, chain. We're going to have a decade, And then we are going to have a chain bead chain. So then to this, we are going to add another decade. Now we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, and now we're going to add a chain bead chain section onto this. Now once we have that connected, we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, which then we're going to add a decade to. Now we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, and now we're going to add a chain bead chain to this. Now we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade. We should have a chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, and now we're going to add on our last decade to this. So now once that's attached, we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, a decade. That's a little looped. And now we're going to add on our last little piece of chain, that little piece of chain that we set aside earlier. So now at the end of this, we should have a chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain bead chain, decade, chain. That could be a song, honestly. So now we're going to set that to the side. We're going to deal with that later, and we're going to move on to what we have remaining. So I have my 4 jump rings, and I have my 2 chain bead chains. I have a rosary center, a crucifix, and then my 3 bead chain. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to move my jump ring, my crucifix, and my rosary center to the side, and we're going to be working with the last beads that we have here. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a mini version of what we just did. I'm going to do chain bead chain, 3 bead section, chain bead chain, and connect them like how we just did. So this is what we should have now. And then now we're going to move on to basically assembling the whole thing. Like now it's going to start to look like a rosary. We're going to take 1 jump ring, and we're going to take our crucifix, and we're going to take our chain bead chain, 3 beads, chain bead chain. Basically right here, we're going to open up the jump ring, and we're going to do this by moving the ring to the side so it opens. Basically, I'm going to show you a bigger version of this with a bigger jump ring so you can get a better idea. But I'll also have a video link down below to tell you how to open up a jump ring, because I don't think that this video explains it enough. But here's me showing you on a bigger jump ring, and I do this with my flat nose pliers and my round nose pliers. So now once I have my jump ring open, I'm going to thread one of the chains from the chain bead chain section onto the jump ring, and then I'm going to thread the crucifix onto the jump ring. Like so. Now I'm going to close the jump ring by mushing the 2 ends together like so. And like I said, I'll have a video link down below that'll have a better explanation. Now I have a crucifix and the whole chain bead section. I'm going to take a jump ring, and I'm going to take my rosary center. So basically I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to open the jump ring, and I'm going to hook the ends of the chain onto the bottom of the rosary center. Then I'm going to take another jump ring, and now we're going to pull back in that whole chain bead chain thing that we made earlier with all the decades, and we're going to loop that chain onto a jump ring and onto one of the edges of the rosary center. So here's me showing you kind of what I'm going to do. So now that that's connected, we're going to take our last jump ring, and we're going to connect that jump ring to the rosary center, to the chain, and so we have basically a rosary now. So we should have a crucifix, chain bead chain, 3 beads, chain bead chain, rosary centers, and basically you have a rosary. So to people who don't know what a rosary is, basically this kind of looks like a necklace now, but it's the rosary. And here's me showing you the final product. So that is how you make a rosary, guys. This is me just showing off the findings, showing off the materials. We have our crucifix, we have our rosary center, which is upside down, And yeah, so let me know if you guys make this rosary and let me know how it goes. And tell me if you're tired of how many times I said chain bead chain. I'm tired of saying that over and over again, but let me know. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed that tutorial on how to make a rosary. Let me know if I annoyed you a little bit by how many times I kept saying bead, chain, decade. I can't remember, but I said it would be a good song and my voiceover. I don't know what I was talking about there, but let me know if you end up making a rosary or if you found this tutorial helpful and other Catholic crafts you'd like me to make in the future. Just let me know, and I look forward to seeing you guys in my next one. Bye-bye.